Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're opening up the files on a really fascinating plant, one that kind of lives a double life, Acalypha indica.
That's right. You might know it as Indian nettle or Indian copper leaf. It's part of that big botanically potent Euphorbiaceae family.
And that double life you mentioned, that's really why we're diving in today, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because in its native regions, the tropics, it's this incredibly respected ancient remedy. Been used for centuries.
Right, a cornerstone in traditional healing. But then you look at the modern clinical side and, well, the story takes a bit of a sharp turn. There are some serious safety warnings.
Exactly. So our mission today is to try and navigate that complexity. We're looking at traditional texts, think Borix Materia Medica.
The classic homeopathic source.
Right. And we're setting that alongside modern science phytochemical analyses and, critically, these recent safety reports.
Okay, so the goal is to give you, the listener, a quick but solid understanding of its specific uses, its really unique symptom profile in homeopathy.
But always keeping that essential safety context front and center. So let's start at the beginning. Where does this plant actually grow? And what's its track record, traditionally speaking?
Geographically, it's a tropical native. Thrives in places like India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia. You often find it just growing in damp, sort of neglected spots.
That have local names, right?
Yeah, in India, for instance, it's often called Kupi in Ayurveda or Muktajashuri, names that signal its long history there.
And in those traditional systems, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, it wasn't really seen as a niche remedy. It was more of a general workhorse.
Okay.
Highly valued for broad properties. It's known to be anti-inflammatory, analgesic, that's pain-relieving, antifungal, and antipyretic, so fever-reducing.
So like a botanical Swiss Army knife, almost.
Pretty much. And a lot of its primary use is really focused on the respiratory system.
Ah, okay. Like coughs.
Exactly. The leaves were commonly prepared as an expectorant, good for persistent coughs, bronchitis, even asthma. The idea was it helped loosen congestion, made breathing easier.
Makes sense. What about using it externally? Traditional medicine often involves applying plants right onto the skin.
Oh, definitely. Poultices, thick pastes made from the leaves. Those were standard treatments for skin issues, things like eczema, dermatitis, or just general cuts and scrapes.
And did it have a specific reputation there?
Yes, our sources mention it was known for promoting wound healing. The thinking was it actually helps stimulate tissue regeneration.
Interesting. Now, I did come across one detail that really stood out. It highlights the ingenuity, maybe the directness of some traditional methods. Something about constipation in children.
Ah, yes, that's a well-documented traditional preparation. Quite potent. To relieve severe constipation, they'd make this wet pulp from the plant,
Right.
mix it with old ghee that's clarified butter, and then introduce it rectally. A powerful laxative effect. It really shows how strong they knew this herb could be.
Wow. That's quite something.
And separately, but along the same lines, if you mix the leaf paste with lime juice, that was the go-to for skin parasites like scabies and ringworm, again, hitting those antiparasitic, antifungal properties.
Okay, so we have this picture of a broad traditional workhorse anti-inflammatory, good for lungs, skin. But then we shift gears into homeopathy. Things get much more specific, right? What's the defining Acalypha indica drug picture, according to Barak?
Yeah, exactly. In homeopathy, we move from those general properties to very, very specific symptom patterns. Barak really emphasizes its action on two main systems, the alimentary canal, so the whole GI tract, and the respiratory organs.
And it's linked to some pretty serious conditions historically.
Yes, particularly incipient phthisis. That's basically early-stage tuberculosis, often the kind with rapid wasting, emaciation.
So what specific symptoms would make a homeopath think Acalypha indica for early TB over other remedies?
The symptoms are quite dramatic. You're looking at a hard, racking cough, sometimes with significant arterial hemorrhage, bleeding, and bloody sputum.
Sounds severe.
It is.
Yeah.
But here's the absolute key, the thing that really points towards this remedy in Borky's view. All of this happens without a fever. That lack of febrile disturbance is critical for defining this specific picture.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. Now, before we dive deeper into those symptoms, there's a term you used, modality. Can we just quickly clarify that for listeners? Why is it so important in homeopathy?
Sure. A modality is just any condition or circumstance that makes the patient's symptoms noticeably better or worse. It's the when and how of the suffering, essentially.
Like time of day or weather or position.
Exactly. And for Acalypha indica, The single most important modality, the one thing you really need to remember, is a strong morning aggravation.
Everything gets worse in the morning.
Everything. The patient feels incredibly weak, just exhausted first thing. They only start to gain some strength as the day goes on.
And that applies across the board.
Critically, yes. Boericke notes it applies to all the pathological hemorrhages the patient might be experiencing. That morning timing is like a fingerprint for this remedy. It helps separate it out.
Okay, let's get back to those respiratory symptoms then. You said they were detailed.
Incredibly so. The cough itself is described as dry and hard, and it leads pretty quickly to hemoptysis that's coughing up blood.
Right.
But here's where it gets really specific, almost peculiar. The quality of the blood changes with the time of day.
How so?
Boericke describes it as bright red and not very profuse in the morning, but then later in the day, in the afternoon, it becomes dark and clotted.
Wow, that's very specific.
It is. It suggests a real shift in the nature of the bleeding as the day progresses. And this is usually accompanied by constant, quite severe chest pain.
That level of detail, that changing nature of the blood, is that the kind of unique feature that helps a homeopath pinpoint this specific remedy?
Absolutely. Homeopathy often hinges on these highly characteristic, sometimes quite strange defining symptoms. It's about matching the totality, including these unique points, and the GI symptoms, equally vivid, equally defining.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, there's burning in the intestines, lots of rumbling, distension. And then there's the diarrhea. Boericke has this really memorable description.
Okay.
Spluttering diarrhea with forcible expulsion of noisy flatus.
Spluttering diarrhea. Okay.
Yeah, it paints quite a picture. It's explosive. And it comes with severe tenesmus, that awful, urgent feeling of needing to go even when there's nothing left.
Painful.
Very. And of course, rectal hemorrhage often accompanies this. And just like the chest symptoms, the bleeding is worse in the morning.
So it's not just any diarrhea remedy, it's the specific explosive bleeding picture all tied together by that morning aggravation.
Precisely. It's a very distinct profile affecting both the lungs and the gut.
That's a powerful historical and clinical picture. Now, let's pivot slightly. Does modern science back any of this up? What does a phytochemical analysis tell us? Does it connect with these traditional uses?
It does, actually, quite strongly. When scientists analyze the leaves and other parts, they find a whole range of active compounds, things like alkaloids, flavonoids, tannins, phenols, glycosides, saponins. The list goes on.
Can we link any specific compounds back to those general properties we talked about earlier, the anti-inflammatory analgesic effects?
We definitely can. The alkaloids found in the plant, like one called Acalypha, are known to have anti-inflammatory, pain-relieving, and antimicrobial properties. So that directly supports its traditional use for general inflammation, pain, like in arthritis or gout, and for fighting infections.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the flavonoids?
Well, it contains flavonoids like quercetin and rutin. These are really well-studied compounds, famous for being potent antioxidants. They also have significant anti-inflammatory and anti-allergic effects.
So that would tie into the respiratory uses, asthma, maybe hay fever.
Exactly. That anti-allergic action provides a clear scientific rationale for why it was traditionally used for those kinds of respiratory complaints. So yes, modern science does validate many of the historical applications cited in our sources.
That's good to see that connection. Now, just briefly, how do we get from the raw plant to the homeopathic remedy described by Boericke? What's the process?
The starting point is something called the mother tincture. It's often labeled Q. This is made using a process called maceration.
Which involves?
Basically, you take the fresh plant material, usually the leaves and flowers for Acalypha indica, and you soak it in a mixture of alcohol and water for a period of time. This creates a concentrated liquid extract.
And that's the mother tincture.
Correct. And from that concentrated tincture, the different homeopathic potencies are made.
Through dilution?
Yes, through serial dilution. The tincture is diluted again and again, and between each dilution step, it's vigorously shaken, a process called succussion. This creates the various potencies, like the 3rd to 6th potency Boericke often suggested for this remedy, which are actually considered relatively low dilutions in homeopathy.
Okay. Now, this is where we absolutely have to bring in the crucial modern context. We've heard the compelling history, the interesting science, but there's a potential danger here, right? Yeah. What are the safety concerns we need to flag?
Yes, this is vital. And we have to start with the standard but very important caveat. Scientific research on its specific medicinal effects and, crucially, its potential side effects is still quite limited, especially long-term use.
So consulting a healthcare professional is essential.
Non-negotiable, always. But beyond that general caution, there is one very specific, potentially life-threatening risk linked to using the crude plant, like in a traditional herbal broth.
And this is the key takeaway on safety.
Absolutely. This is the critical piece. Modern case reports have clearly shown that Acalypha indica, especially when someone drinks it as an herbal broth, a traditional preparation, can trigger a severe condition called acute oxidative hemolysis.
Okay, slow down. Acute oxidative hemolysis. What does that mean in simple terms?
It means the body starts rapidly destroying its own red blood cells.
That sounds bad.
It's very serious. It essentially leads to acute blood poisoning and puts immense strain on the body, especially the kidneys. And this reaction is particularly dangerous for people with a specific genetic condition.
Which is?
G6PD deficiency. Glucose-6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. It's actually a relatively common enzyme deficiency worldwide.
So people with G6PD deficiency are missing an enzyme that normally protects their red blood cells.
Exactly. It protects them from oxidative stress. Certain substances, including compounds in raw Acalypha indica, create oxidative stress. In someone with G6PD deficiency, the red blood cells can't handle it, and they break down, they hemolyze.
That is a stark warning, a direct contraindication for potentially millions of people. What did the case reports actually show happening to patients?
Well, one recent report described a 33-year-old man. He drank an herbal broth made from the plant and developed severe hemolysis, which then led to acute kidney injury.
Kidney failure from drinking the broth.
Yes. And what's particularly worrying for doctors is that this whole clinical picture, the hemolysis, the kidney injury, can look a lot like other serious illnesses like leptospirosis, which is common in some of the same regions.
So it could be misdiagnosed if the doctor doesn't know about the herbal broth.
Precisely. That delay in correct diagnosis can be dangerous. In this specific case, the patient unfortunately had further complications, including infective endocarditis, a heart infection during his recovery.
Wow. So the danger isn't just the initial reaction, but how it can mask other things and lead to complications? Okay, so G6PD deficiency is a major red flag. Who else needs to be cautious or avoid this plant entirely?
Well, the standard precautions apply. Pregnant and breastfeeding women should avoid it, simply not enough safety data. Anyone with a known allergy to Acalypha indica itself, or, importantly, to other plants in the Euphorbiaceae family, like poinsettias or castor bean plants, should obviously steer clear.
Okay.
And because of the potential strain, especially highlighted by that kidney injury case, individuals with pre-existing kidney or liver disease should definitely avoid it. Plus, there's a possibility of interactions with certain medications, think blood thinners or maybe some antidepressants. Again, talk to your doctor.
Right. So this deep dive has really shown Acalypha indica as a powerful plant with layers. There's the deep history, that very specific homeopathic profile Boric described, especially that unforgettable morning aggravation.
And then there's the unavoidable stark reality of the modern safety warnings, particularly around the crude herb and G6PD deficiency.
It really is a fascinating example of how our understanding has to evolve, isn't it? The traditional uses point to real potential, likely driven by those phytochemicals we discussed.
But the inherent risks, especially tied to specific metabolic pathways like G6PD, mean we absolutely need that critical, up-to-date knowledge for safe use. You can't separate the benefit from the potential risk.
Which brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to think about. We've clearly established that the raw herbal broth, with its high concentration of active compounds, can be dangerous, causing severe hemolysis in people with G6PD deficiency.
Right, the crude form carries significant risk for susceptible individuals.
Yet, homeopathic potencies, as we discussed, involve extreme dilution, often to the point where, chemically, there's virtually none of the original plant substance left. So what really stands out to you when you contrast the documented risks of the crude herbal broth with the highly diluted homeopathic preparations described by Boric?
What does this huge difference in concentration suggest about how dosage and preparation fundamentally change a substance's safety profile and its potential toxicity? It's a core question in comparing herbalism and homeopathy.
Something to definitely mull over. We encourage you to maybe explore that relationship between botanical concentration, specific toxicities, and preparation methods further.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep digging into the details.